Nope, not yet.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, it says. So hello, hello. We are the Mystic Mavens, and we are delighted to be here on the winter solstice to welcome you with more good conversation about all things mystical. I am Kathy Basel. I'm a transformational life coach and energy healer working with women in their 50s to step into this next exciting chapter fully empowered. This is the grand finale chapter of our lives. I really, really want you to live aligned and manifesting your heart's desire. So that's me, Miss Joanna. Introduce yourself. And
Oh, so great to be here with everyone tonight for the winter solstice. Oh, I'm so happy that we get to gather on such a wonderful occasion and talk everything mystical, the jam of my heart. I am Joanna White, a spiritual, holistic, intuitive teacher, and my mission is to revolutionize healthcare by bringing it back to self-care, learning the natural way to come into balance to who you are. And as we talk tonight, and Claudia gives us some wonderful keys onto coming back into balance, I'm excited to be here for more to add to my tool belt. Miss Claudia.
Thank you, beautiful Maven sister. Hello, everyone. I'm Claudia Rocafort, and I am honored to be here with you guys tonight as one of the Mystic Mavens. Tonight, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite books of all time. And in celebration of the solstice, I'm actually having a little glass of wine with you all to celebrate. So, the Kybalion. The Kybalion is a book that was shared with me when I was still in college, and I was about 20 years old at the time. And I read it in Spanish, which was not my usual. I much rather read in English. But it was given to me by a dear friend who was Peruvian. And I always found that culture to be quite mystical. And this is one of those books that apparently for centuries and actually millennia was handed down from person to person until finally somebody in 1908 grabbed the principles, wrote it down, and these are the principles written originally by Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus was an Egyptian master of masters. It's actually what it means, 3 times the master. He was a king, a prophet, and a scribe, and he is said and believed to have lived hundreds of years, maybe thousands. He was one of these people who, like Saint Germain or like other mystical figures, have affected history and all religions on one way or another. So he's written from, it was said to believe that he wrote between sort of 100 years before Christ to about 100 years after. So over a period of 200 years, he was one of the most influential figures and was said to be, again, this master of masters during the Ptolemaic period in Mediterranean Hellenistic period history. Now, what made it really interesting is that he was a combination for all of the cultures of the time. So the Egyptians considered him to be the god Thoth. The Greeks considered him to be the god Hermes. So he became this kind of figure that intertwined between the Greek and Egyptian cultures. And he became one of the most influential philosophers of the time, developing something called Hermeticism. Now, Hermeticism was they believed at the time, in ancient times, that there was one theology, one God, and one religion, or one theology and one set of principles that applied to every single religion. There weren't the differences in the separation that we've seen over the last 2 millennia. And what I find so beautiful is it was believed that each one of the masters for each religion shared the commonalities of these truths. Difference is that each culture changed them somewhat, and the master that came to teach them was slightly different after Hermes Trismegistus. So to me, it's really fascinating because it's kind of the origin of the Christian faith. It is also, it was found in the Muslim and then the Baha'i writings. It was also considered and associated with the prophet Idris. And many Christian writers believed that he was the pagan prophet who foresaw the coming of Christianity. So every major religion on the planet was somewhat influenced by this man and his writings and teachings. So that to me is pretty impressive, right? Now, over the years, what ended up happening is that, as I mentioned before, it was handed down specifically from initiate to initiate, from scribes and priests and priestesses onto others. It was not a common thing that was shared. And most of these teachings went into kind of hiding for quite some time, especially during the times of the Inquisition and things like that, that did not allow for anything beyond the dogmatic teachings to be considered truth. And at the beginning of the century, it was written by 3 initiates. So there was great mystery as to who actually wrote it, who were the initiates, how were they initiated into the teachings. So there was something a little bit occult that was always intriguing about this book. And when it was handed to me, it was actually a photocopied version of it that a friend who was into spiritual teachings passed on to me. So nowadays you can actually find it. You can buy it yourself. You can find it on Amazon. It's a little dense, but tonight we're going to just kind of talk about the 7 principles, because so much of New Age philosophy and so many truths are now being proven by science that were first originally written in this book. So many of you have probably heard about The Secret or the Law of Attraction, right? And that comes from this principle, from the Kybalion. So many of the teachings throughout. So let's jump right in and start talking a little bit about what are those laws, right? What do they look like? What are they? And how we can apply them. And then my Maven sisters are going to be talking a little bit about how they applied them in their lives, how we all use them, and how you can apply them in yours. So hang on. I'm going to share a little bit screen here because I think that it'll be at least prettier than me just telling you about it. And so the Kybalion. And one of the things that was really interesting that is part of the scripture that they talked about was the fact that this quote I found very interesting. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. And one of these big precepts about the Kybalion was that these laws can be so simple, but most people couldn't hear them, couldn't understand them. Because again, even though the truths were there, most people didn't quite grasp what these things meant and how they could apply them in their own lives. So we've all talked a little bit about, and if you've been watching our shows, we always say that the teacher presents himself or herself when the student is ready, right? This is kind of what the principle of the Kybalion is as well. It's when you are ready, the principles and the truths will come to you. The masters will come to you. The teachers will come to you. So I'm very excited to share this with you all today. The first one is the principle of mentalism. Now, the all is mind and the universe is mental. According to the Kybalion, this is the first fundamental truth. Everything that we see in existence was first a thought by the divine intelligence of the all, of that life force and creative force that created everything that is. Now, if we hold this to be true, right, when we hear in different religions that we are, for example, made in the image of God, that means that we have the same creative power through this medium. Because if the all is mind and the universe is mental, then by changing our minds, we change how we perceive our reality and how our reality manifests. That's a pretty powerful thing. right? I mean, if we stop to consider what that actually means, and if we just take this to be true, I don't want to push anybody's religious beliefs or in any way, shape, question them, but it's more about a philosophy of life and kind of like the way that we wouldn't question gravity because science has proven it to be real, right? I'm inviting all of you to test this, to test these principles and try them on and see what shifts and changes in your life. So if we imagine that before the Big Bang, the grand organizing design that many religions or many people call God, right? This all intelligence and wisdom first created the thought of what it wanted to create and manifest. And then manifestation occurred, right? How can we now apply that in our lives and put this law to use? So let's talk a little bit about this. The all is mind and the universe is mental.
Like you said, it sounds like it's been echoed over time. And so I bet me as well as a lot of our listeners are it feels familiar, like the Science of Getting Rich is one of the first books that popped to mind when you said that the substance, that all we need to do is to learn to impress upon the infinite substance so that we can draw back those things that already exist. So to me, it's fascinating how the truth, is timeless, and it's another beautiful way of being reminded that that is within us. And by learning to focus or set intention or however that process begins, that we can initiate and become one with that all.
I love that.
Oh yeah. It's yeah, pretty much what you're saying.
What you said.
We've heard it.
Ditto.
And we hear it in so many different forms. And like you said, with every religion, it's the truth of what it is. So that's why it's repeated over and over again. So that's how you can kind of differentiate religion and the truth of what it is. So the truth is that we are this universal mind and we have that power that flows through us. That's the truth of who we are. And when we come in tune with that truth, is when we begin to see the manifestations actually happen in our lives. I wanted to just swing back to when you said the lips of wisdom comes from the one that gets understood. What was it? I think it was understanding or like a closed or
Yeah. The lips of wisdom are closed except to those ears of understanding.
And when I studied the Bible, one of my favorite scriptures was Proverbs 4. And it was wisdom is key. And with all thy wisdom, get understanding. And that's what it was about. And that's what I gathered from that, because no matter how much we learn, and we know it as dealing with clients, oh, I know that. But the understanding of that is now bringing it to yourself. Did I understand what this does for me? So we know a lot of things, but when you take it to the level of getting understanding, that's when you truly get to the nature of who you are. And that's when you see the power of that universal mind start working to you and through you for all others. So it's that understanding that is really the key to all these universal laws that we'll probably go over tonight.
I think that's a mic drop moment. To me, that was so powerful, Joanna. Thank you. Because again, it's one thing to know them mentally, but it's another thing to feel it in your system, to know it in your heart, to that knowingness that comes when we feel truth, we understand truth, we're in the essence and presence of truth. And some of these principles have governed so many books that we've seen over the New Age books in the 90s, and all of this awakening. Even quantum physics is now proving many of these principles to be true. So we'll be talking a little bit about more of that as they show up. But this one, if we think about the saying mind over matter, right? Just where that comes from. And we've been saying this for centuries, mind over matter. This is exactly it. Mind will affect matter. And that leads us a little bit into the second law, which is the law of correspondence. So I'm going to share screen for a moment again, because I want you to see the actual quotes from the book instead of just hearing it from me. And we talked already a little bit about, let's see, we talked a moment about the principle of mentalism, right? That the universe is mental. So in other shows that we've shared, like The Science of Getting Rich, that Kathy brought up, they call it the thinking substance. And I think that's powerful, because if we can imprint our vision into that infinite intelligence space between atoms, that thinking substance that permeates in everything and everyone, which is the kind of wording that they use, which is beautiful. If you actually grabbed a microscope and you looked at the atom and the cell, the space between one and the other is vast, is huge. We think of ourselves as concrete and the world as concrete, but it is not. It is in constant movement, and infinitesimal atoms and eons and electrons and neutrons that are vastly separated by tons and tons and tons of space. And in these principles, we consider that that space in between the matter is that thinking substance where the all, where the grand operating design resides, and where it can affect. So just by making the choice to envision, right, and start looking at, what do I want my life to look like? Start creating a vision for yourself, but not just as a dream, but ask the universe to support you. Ask that thinking stuff to hold those visions, to manifest those visions. And then we bring in this principle of correspondence. As above, so below. And so the principle of correspondence talks about whatever we think about becomes manifestation. Now, we're often not realizing that a lot of times we're driving our life like we drive a car, with foot on the gas and another foot on the brake. Every time that I think I want this to manifest in my life, and I think I'm not good enough, or I think it's not going to happen, or I doubt how it's going to happen, I'm doing that. I'm putting a stop, a break on the manifestation. And that was one of my big ahas. That was one of those big moments of realization of, anytime I doubt myself, now I erase it. I say, erase, erase, erase. And I set my intention to open myself up to, when I feel the doubt, even just to set an intention, I open myself to the possibility of X. I choose to allow X to come into my life.
Well, I like how you just said that, of I open myself to the possibility of, because I think as a healer, I think I can see, as we get so caught up in trying to erase all the, the fears, the doubts, the past traumas, the trapped emotions, all those things, we can almost get hyper focused on behind. And it's really time for us to, you need not concern yourself with the past, but only from this moment forward, what do you choose? So I just love how that softened that need to be right and perfect and ready. It's like, no, I'm opening myself to the possibility, and there's a surrender little essence in there, I think, as well. Just like, let the rest just be the past for now.
Mm-hmm.
Surrendering.
And that surrender is great. Go ahead, Joanna, please.
Yeah, that's the That's the part. Even with the understanding, it's now surrendering to it and saying that I can change, that I don't have to be that same whatever version, whatever situation, whatever it is, and allow yourself the space to say, I can open up to be that version that I want to see. I can now see, because what I like to tell people is you create the movie. So if I'm the star, how does the star go wrong? you the star always wins. So create your movie as the star.
Love
Always.
that.
So when your role doesn't start playing out the way you like, you change that. Nobody else changes it. So that's what I mean. Like you're able to switch your role at any moment, and you're the only one, you're the director, the producer, you're it. So so yeah, that's I feel is how I kind of look at it, to know, because sometimes we think, like you said, Kathy, on a broad range of right and wrong. And it's really not. It's really frequency. It's like, okay, how does this make me feel? Does it make me feel good, or does it make me feel low? Like, am I feeling like high, I could take on the world, or am I feeling like the world has defeated me? And that's how we kind of need to know if we need to switch up this character, because that means your character is not serving you. You got to get a different role. So just look at it as a movie. That's how I like to tell people. Create your movie.
I think that's brilliant. And I hadn't ever thought about it that way. But yeah, I'd like to be the star of my own movie. Thank you very much. I think it's brilliant.
Well, you are. That's the thing.
Whether you choose it or not, right? And whether you're
You
doing it
are.
consciously or
Yeah.
unconsciously. And that's the key. More often than not, we are creating our reality unconsciously most of the time by those thoughts, by those doubts, by whatever radio we have in our minds, much of which is our conditioning and our upbringing and the culture that we were raised in. All of that determines the thoughts we have. Many of them aren't even chosen by us, and we haven't stopped to actually question them. And so my invitation to everybody is look at what's manifesting in your life, and whatever you don't necessarily love or not like right now, ask yourself, how are you showing up in your life? Are you showing up as the victor or as the victim? Are you showing up in ways that you're integral with your word and driven by your passions, or have you learned helplessness and given up? Right? Are you
I
finding
love Joanna's metaphor about the movie, like in Rocky, there's the hero's journey in every tale, including our lives, like we're born into this thing, we must leave the home, you've got this struggle and this strife, and then you get that coming home. So it's like, what version of Rocky are you being at this moment in time? I love that, because you already are the fellow on top of the on top of the stairs. And I love that metaphor that you've brought to illustrate this. So good.
brilliant? Absolutely brilliant. And it's true. Like we don't often stop to consider how much so this is, how real this is. Everything in our lives is mirroring on some level what is above is so below. So this principle is that powerful, right? Whenever something happens, my spiritual teacher, Rayleigh, used to always say, you can't do anything, you can't change anybody else. You can't do anything outside of yourself. Yeah. The only thing you get to change is you, your perception of that incident, your perception of the truth, your understanding of a situation. How is this happening for me instead of how this is happening to me? if we can come from that belief and that understanding that whatever I think about will empower me. I love the Henry Ford quote. If you think you can and you think you can't, you're right. So whatever one you believe, that's the one you're going to manifest. And scientifically, it's starting to be proven more and more. The reticular activating system, right, which kind of helps our survival in our ancient brain, our more animal brain, will look for all of the examples to prove whatever belief you hold. And this is scientifically being proven every day. So if you think that you're not good enough, you're going to show up that way, right? If you think you can't, obstacles will show up for you. And go ahead, please.
I just feel like people don't think that they're not showing up for them. You know what I mean? Because I remember or going through this stage in learning these principles, just hearing about them and, and I would never say to myself, I'm not showing up or I'm not, like in that sense. The thing is, how can we tell them to recognize that I need these principles? You know what I mean? Like, because some people really don't have a clue that they're not showing up.
No, you're absolutely right. Because that's that first quote. Like, until you begin to understand and see it and are open to seeing it, because part of it is also that openness, that willingness to say, let me try this on for a minute. Like, it sounds bizarre that I'm creating my own reality. I didn't want to create this and this and this and this and this, right? So there is that conflict. But when we can try it on for a minute and say, how did I contribute to this situation showing up in my life? Without judgment, just from the point of questioning, like, how could I have shown up differently? Or how could I have done it differently? Or how is this happening for me? What am I meant to learn from it? How is it a gift rather than a punishment? Right? Like,
and that too is a frame of mind. We've been taught to think of it as punishments, and it's not. It's actually learning the lesson. The punishment comes when we don't learn the lesson. And that's when we keep going through it over and over again. So it's not meant for punishment. It's meant to teach us a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually a lesson for our spiritual growth so that we can move on to greater things, to
keep
freedom.
Transcending to that.
Learning to transcend it. Yeah. And to start to use it towards your own highest good. Right? So I don't know about you guys, but I certainly, and to this day, still have moments where I'm like, I did not create this. This was not me. You know what I mean? It's like,
not me.
Oh God, all right, help me.
And that's what I'm saying.
How did I do this?
It's denial, because I've been there. Still there.
Oh, no, we're all still there. Like, if we had been able to transcend that completely, we would be enlightened beings.
Yeah.
Right. So just know that we're there with you. And we are all on different steps of learning how to practice this more and love ourselves more and be non-judgmental about it. But look at situations as they arise and say, okay, how did I co-create this? What up here is manifesting this reality out here for me?
As above, so below.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that saying before, and I never knew that. Is this the original place that it came from?
Yeah, this is the origin about 2,100 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Pretty special.
But I really
Go ahead.
You go ahead. No, I'm not going to go.
No,
You go. I'm just thinking about Joanna's question about, if you're kind of in denial of not recognizing, if just like you said, as you teed it up, if there's something in your life that you're not, if it's up here and you don't like the picture up here, then so below, like, or vice versa, just recognizing there's still another opportunity to clean up and come into alignment or coherence with what it is you really want. It's interesting.
I love that. Thank you, Kathy. It's coming into alignment. Just being willing to recognize it and say, maybe there's something there that I haven't quite cleaned out yet. Maybe there's a belief, or I'm holding resentment about something and I'm judging something about myself or my life rather than releasing that and allowing myself. Sometimes, Rayleigh used to always say to me, when you're not ready to fully shift or to really take something on, are you willing to allow the possibility? And I love that. That always shifted things for me. Yeah, I'm willing to allow the possibility that this is going to support me and this is happening for me. Thank you. Yeah, that feels a lot better, right? Than it's happening to me.
Mhm.
So again, that would just begin to open up the resistance so that I could start to look at what's happening up here that's manifesting out here without judgment. And choosing to love myself a little bit in the process rather than judge myself. Like, why did I do this? So, all right, let's go to number 3. And number 3 is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, and everything vibrates. Nowadays, we love having these sayings like, sending good vibes, right? This is where it comes from. It's the principle of vibration. Absolutely everything that is alive has a vibration, even a rock, right? It's actually in constant movement because it's so slow we don't get to see it. Now, that vibration affects everything. Our vibration, our emotional vibration, affects our heart. Notice that even in movies, people tend to have heart attacks when they've been given really tough news or when they're in pain or in anger, right? There's something about the vibration when we go into these deep, deep destructive emotional states or painful emotional state that will affect everything around us, our bodies, our minds, our thoughts, and our reality. So we've talked a lot about vibration in our previous shows, and we're going to be doing a little bit more of that in January when Joanna is going to guide us through upping your vibes. So she'll be telling you more about that afterwards. But how does this show up? And we have a previous show that we talked about as well, talking about raising your consciousness and your inner vibration. And I want to show you just a couple of slides because there's this consciousness principle by Hawkins that says that each emotion has a vibration. The lowest one being shame. And then we raise it through guilt, which is a little lighter than shame, apathy, which is lighter than guilt, grief, which is lighter than apathy, right? And as we start to feel more things, that fear, maybe desire, is that raising of that vibration. So how does vibration affect? Our vibration affects everybody around us, whether we're conscious about it or not. Our vibration affects our bodies, whether we're conscious about it or not. Our vibration affects our organs and the health of our organs, whether we're conscious about it or not. So becoming conscious of how our feelings bring down or raise our vibration is huge. And when we are feeling off, right? In our previous show, we've talked a little bit about, can I just go into neutrality? Can I, if I'm not ready to forgive, or I'm not ready to release the anger, I'm not ready to release the pain or the grief, can I just bring myself into one step above? Maybe it's about courage, or maybe it's about pride. Well, anger is better than shame. So these charts, as we ask ourselves, am I willing to now go into courage? Can I feel courageous about the situation and maybe how I want to change it? Or about the way that I'm feeling? And can I reach, neutrality? Can I start shifting it? Sometimes it's very difficult to go to gratitude, but gratitude is one of the closest feelings to enlightenment that there are on the scale. So what can I be grateful for? If I can just shift from how is this happening to me, where I'm the victim and I have no say and I can't do anything about it, how do I shift to how's this happening for me? And be grateful for any aspect that I see. That automatically will bring me into a higher vibration. Now, I'm sharing this one because this is the one that I use for me, and it's very, very helpful to me to remember all of these feelings when I've been in those moments of just anger and I can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel and I want to throw somebody off the balcony. Then I try to find, how do I bring it into possible pride or even courage? Right? How do I bring it into neutrality? How do I go into willingness? Am I willing to release this? Just that brings us above the line. So I would love for you ladies to share, how do you raise your vibration and how have you found it to be useful as a law in your lives?
Well, I think you've just said something brilliant, about that. Can I be open to the possibility? Because as you looked at the line, as we move from some of the lower ones, the very first emotion that begins to be a higher vibration is courage. So would you have the courage to let go of the known, which is the past, which is all the identities, which is all those things, and begin to lean in? Then one of the next words or something, and then neutral. So let go, let it go. Like you were saying, let go of the judgment. Judgment makes it a negative thing. Let go of that and then lean in. The next word up is willingness. So just lean into that possibility. It takes a little courage, takes a little letting go of the judgment, but would you be open to the possibility? So I love that. And Abraham Hicks talks about the emotional guidance system, similar, where you don't necessarily jump from something really negative all the way to joy and bliss. It's like, no, sometimes it takes an ascendance step by step up that chart to, would you be willing to just stop judging yourself based on something, something, something? Would you just be willing to consider another possibility and allow yourself to slowly ascend up the scale? And the quicker you do it without that judgment and referencing of the past, the quicker you can ascend up that chart.
Yeah. I love that. And it is willingness. Sometimes just that little bit of stop fighting the feeling and surrender a moment. If we can get into that, oh, you know what? I'm willing to surrender this anger right now. Just, I'm willing to surrender it. And I am willing, okay, I'm willing to feel differently, to feel courage, or to take an action step towards loving myself more and supporting myself more. And everything changes.
Yeah. What I found helps a lot, helps me, is knowing how I want to feel. A lot of times when you talk to people and I'll ask them, so what would feel better? I don't even know. So knowing what would even feel better. So taking a moment when we're angry or even angry at someone else, or I ask myself, well, Joanna, what would feel better? And then let's focus on that. Because if that would feel better, why am I sitting here focusing on what made me feel bad? So knowing what would feel better, I think, is a key that has helped me a lot in that growing process of moving through those stages, because that person that blames and becomes the victim, if they were focusing their vibe, like I like to say it, focusing their vibe on what would feel better, we wouldn't be in that place of fear, because or that lower vibration. So like for us to get up and be on camera, and what would feel better for us is not necessarily doing this, but reaching the masses that they can now be able to learn from what we've already gone through. That feels good to us. So that's why we move through that fear of other people judging us and other people, and we keep going, because the greater picture that we see is what does feel better. And that's somebody saying your words helped me, or it's this guided me, or whatever it may be. So to me, that's what has helped me go through that stage of vibration, is knowing what would feel better.
Powerful. Very powerful question, because it takes you out of where you're at,
Right.
so that you can shift and raise that vibration. We can start looking at where we want to go instead of where we don't want to be. And there's also acceptance in where we are, right? So that whatever we resist persists. So if we're fighting where we are and we don't want to acknowledge where we are, that's not the answer either. It's not about sweeping it under the rug and being like, okay, I'm going into willingness. I'm not even going to face that. But that, where would I like to be, is I think that the step out of where we are, so that we can start to look at, okay, what is actionable? What can I do about it? Now, all of this thinking substance and all of these principles are first mental. They're not just going to miraculously appear just because you thought of it, right? So part of that is incorporating and integrating and putting things into action. So any other thoughts before I move on to the next principle?
I didn't know what the next principle is.
Yeah,
The law of
we have quite a
polarity.
few left. We don't have that much more time.
We've got a few left. Well, I think the three first ones are the most important, because they're the basis of the rest. The first three are the immutable laws. They don't change. They're called the immutable laws. The next set are basically the next four, basically 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the mutable laws. And there's something about them that can be shifted. And so this is where it starts to get interesting, right? The principle of polarity says that everything has duality. Everything has poles. Everything has a pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. So what do I mean by that? Before we continue to the next. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin. They are part of the same essence. It's just a different polarity of the same essence, of that passionate feeling. So when we start to look at these things, at that duality of polarity in this way, what ends up happening is that we begin to understand that all extremes meet, and that all truths are half truths, meaning they're only one side of the equation rather than the totality of the equation. So on one level, all of these paradoxes can be reconciled. And so what does that mean? This is where it starts to get a little heady, and it can start to get a little confusing. So it's simply saying that everything in manifestation has an opposite. So the all is mental. Before the Big Bang, before there was creation, it was all one. It was the law of oneness. There was no way for the all to experience itself because there was nothing outside of the all. If the all contains everything, there's nothing else. It's all there. So it needed to separate itself from itself to be able to experience itself. And what does that look like? Duality and polarity. If I separate, in order for me to experience lightness, I need to know what darkness is. So I need to experience myself as darkness. In order for me to experience darkness, I need to separate myself from myself and be the light and create the light. So in manifestation, everything that is manifested in creation, in reality, has polarity and duality. Good and evil, love and fear, warm and cold. So the key to understanding is that they're two sides of the same coin, right? When we can begin to see that kind of polarity, then it's like, oh, wow, okay. So this is why I could love someone so much and all of a sudden feel so passionate hatred for a moment when we've had this horrible fight or discussion. Like, wait a second, they're just degrees of a passionate emotion. I would love to hear your experience, ladies, on some of these principles on this one. Any thoughts?
Well, for me, I think about, learning so much in Chinese medicine, yin and yang, obviously, because that's what it kind of goes back to. And one of the principles with that is you can't have one without the other, but they're also interdependent on each other. So on that being interdependent, it kind of brings me back to the lessons that we go through, like these lessons of we need those what we consider dark or low moments to shine, to get back up, and to show the power of the very separation. So whatever you call it, God, source, whatever it might be, has to show itself. So it doesn't show itself if you don't get back up, if you don't turn on the light, if you don't find the good that was in the bad. Like there's no activation of that power when you sit in it, is what I like to say. So when you don't, that yin and yang, when you're not growing from that low moment, and I like to call them low, not right, not wrong, not a curse, not, there's so many things that have been taught to us of what is happening in that form of duality. It's not that we're being cursed or anything. It's the duality of what life is happening for you to grow at that moment. Your life is interdependent on that low moment, that dark moment, that whatever it might be that you don't feel good in moment. For you to move forward, we kind of need it. We need those moments. And that's how we gauge this growth, the growth that we have, the growth of, okay, I've been studying these 7 principles. And the thing is, we've studied them maybe in different forms and different aspects of our lives, but we're still studying them. That's the one, you don't ever stop studying.
Well, because it's like the onion, right? We get to peel layers and layers and layers and find deeper truths and more understanding and greater aha moments. And
I was going to say it's almost like playing golf. You know, one day your driver's working, the putter's not, and the very next day could be just the opposite. So you're never going to have the day when it's all 14 clubs are firing optimally.
That's enlightenment. The day where it all kind of comes.
that is it.
Yeah. And that's what we strive for. Well, that's what we are. Yeah.
And this leads straight into the next principle, which is the principle of rhythm, right? Not one state is ever sustainable perpetually. We cannot.
And you wouldn't want it to be.
No.
Yeah,
We
I live in Colorado and we have so much sunshine here equal to Miami. And when we have overcast days, it's almost like a refreshing of like, oh my gosh, gives me such gratitude for the next very next day.
don't.
To me, as you were talking about, duality, one of the early energy works that I studied was called Access Consciousness, and they have a clearing statement, and it starts with good, bad, right, wrong, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys, meons. It's a clearing statement, but the beginning part sets up that duality. So everywhere, what happens is that we are misidentifying ourselves as that point. Like I like Joanna, your the way you called it of like this now moment that's the lesser moment, but it's like we're misidentifying that this is the way it's always going to be and forgetting that this too changes. So when we're misidentifying as good or bad or right or wrong, getting so stuck up, well, he's wrong, they did this, that, that nation did that. We're so stuck in the wrongness of it that going back to that first one, we can't get those ears of understanding, what else is possible? What else could that have mean? Where can we go from here? Where's that next step for us? So this powerful stuff.
And with what you just said, Kathy, it's so powerful because it's not that any of it's not true, but is it the total truth? We're only seeing sometimes a portion, a sliver of the truth. And that truth also is based on that perspective from which we are looking at it.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this in our last session, but it's really powerful. Can we look at these situations in the polarity and say, am I willing to look at the other side? Am I willing to see not just the white and the black, but the infinite shades of gray in between? And to me, that's a very powerful invitation. And it's a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also is true that it never stays in just one place. And that brings us into the law and the principle of rhythm, right? Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. We're going to have high highs. We're going to have lows. We're going to have things rise and fall. And the pendulum swings and it manifests in everything. And then the measure of the swing to the right is equivalent to the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. So that's a really powerful statement and a real powerful truth there, because when I don't know about you ladies, but I used to feel that I had these high highs and low lows to the point where like I thought I was a little manic depressive. And it was just like, whoa, it just felt so intense. One of the things that I appreciate as a little wisdom in the years have passed is that those crazy high highs and low lows are not as extreme, right? That I found more of an easier up and down in my life path. But think about it, there's a rhythm that the earth follows just the same way that our bodies do, of sleep and awake, of introspection and growth and manifestation from spring to winter and back to spring. So everything in life is a cycle. And how we can use this for us, this law for ourselves, is precisely honoring those cycles. Is this a moment when I need to stop and take a break and take a little vacation, or is this a moment for me to push hard for the final reach? And where do I get to honor what's for my highest purpose? How do you ladies apply the rhythms and feel the rhythms in yourselves, in your lives?
Sometimes kicking and screaming. I'm a Florida girl living in Colorado, and wintertime days get short. I'm so glad it's a winter solstice today because it's gonna start getting longer. But yeah, sometimes it's a real battle for me as we enter the darkness. And I've recognized the invitation to go within, and I honor that, and I get creative, and create. I do, but it's interesting, to watch myself with that battle and coming to there's different parts of ourselves. There's the part that's the wise woman, perhaps, that recognizes that this too is for my higher, to go within and allow the soil to be turned and to go fallow for a while. But yes, it's not always easy, but knowing that it's a cycle also gets me excited for when the cycle starts shifting back towards my preferred season.
I feel you. This too shall pass. That's the one that always helped me, right? A little Shakespeare. This too shall pass. It's knowing that it is cyclical, that somehow that darkness will turn into light and long summer days.
Yes. We got to get through these next few
Sure. Let's yeah. Before we exactly. So let's speed up the rhythm, guys. Claudia. So I'm going to share principle number 6 is the principle of cause and effect. Every single thing we do, every choice we make, every thought we have will have an equivalent effect. The thought is the cause. So every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. There is no avoiding the law, just the same way we would not try to, question or challenge the law of gravity by jumping off a bridge if we don't have something to catch us. Think about the same thing in this process. All of these laws that we've shared with you are principles. Every choice, again, action, thought, words, behavior, will have an effect. So chance is but a name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And the invitation here for me is always to look at, okay, if on some level I caused X, Y, and Z to be the effect by my thoughts, by my actions, by my words, I also have the ability to change it.
Yeah.
Right? So what can I do? How did I cause it? I can study it. I can look at it. I can question it. I can learn from it. Or I can also just choose to take different actions, different steps, different choices, speak differently, raise my vibration, shift that polarity. And that cause and effect, that pendulum, one of the things that the Kybalion, we don't have a chance to kind of deep into it tonight, but it says the pendulum is still going to swing the exact same amount one way or the other. But what you have the power to change as you become more and more aware and more enlightened, you have the power to change and shift the reality onto which that pendulum swings. So this base that is your creation, you can shift it. So now all of a sudden the swing of the pendulum is happening here rather than here. And therefore, the pendulum, your lows, for example, will be much higher than they used to be just by practicing the laws and understanding them. And therefore, that cause and effect means that your life shifts and the effects are different. And then the last law, and then we'll probably go over a couple of minutes and just share, because I want to hear how the ladies have experienced these principles and what they can share with us in their brilliance, is the principle of gender. And everything, male and female, has both masculine and feminine energy. We talked about this not too long ago in honoring our divine feminine with a beautiful show that Kathy led and that we invite you to take a look at again. But it is that principle. Everything has yin and yang. Everything has masculine and feminine energy. Gender is everything. Everything has both of these principles, and it manifests on all planes. So once we can get to the point where we can say, I honor the masculine in me, the part that's driven, the part that's powerful, the part that likes to take charge and be a leader, and I honor the feminine in me, the part that loves being taken care of and nurtured and be the nurturer and serve others and support and love and hug and be very physically affectionate, all those things. How do I honor both energies within me? How do you honor both energies within, within you, ladies?
Wow. Um, again, for me, always is recognizing I didn't even realize how much I operated in the masculine energy to know that I needed to turn on the feminine energy.
Well, you and most of humanity for the last
Yeah.
2,000 years, we have been
So,
living in a primarily masculine dominant mentality. Hustle, do. There's not very much space for be and love and right. So how do we shift that?
well, one, it comes with, for me, having compassion for me. And I feel like that's what I was lacking. Like I would have compassion for others if they come to me with something, if they, wanted to talk about something. But me, I would always tell myself, suck it up, you got this, you could do this, you could do. And the conversations that I was having with myself wasn't very compassionate. So how I shift that energy is starting to be a little bit more compassionate with myself and just saying, it's okay. It's okay. I didn't do it today. It's okay. And just shifting that energy is kind of just, to me, that's what I needed for my feminine energy was just some compassion. And having it for myself was the first place to really start.
That I so feel you and hear you right now. It's not even funny. Wow. Because yeah. I mean, I've had to be operating in the do and be in masculine energy for so long, and I forget to have compassion for myself and to just sit and take that moment to journal and take those moments to stop and recoup and honor and give myself a little more compassion and let my feminine be. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Receive.
And our divine Kathy, who is always bringing up the most beautiful aspects of the feminine energy. How would you, any other thoughts or suggestions? I'm sorry I interrupted. I was just so blown away in
Yeah, no,
recognition.
it's
I
so good.
appreciate that, Joanna.
No, definitely a rich conversation tonight. To me, the feminine, just as you said, it's 2000 years, the men and the women both steeped in this thing, and it's really that chance to open to receive. And it begins with that awareness. And just as you said, I'd be willing to be open to receiving, or I'd be willing to open to more being. Like a lot of times we don't even know what that is because we've been so steeped in the masculine way. You know, it just takes the question, what would it take to understand what that, to, be more in that feminine receiving or intuitive side of us. Good stuff.
Yeah. And just the way that we as women have had to step into so many masculine roles, I think it bears to mention that it's really wonderful to see men who are honoring their femininity as well. And when they are allowing themselves to show up in that integrity and in that honoring their feelings and their beingness with women, it's a really beautiful thing. So we invite all of you men out there to please, please, please keep honoring your duality and your feminine side. So that being said, guys, we went a few minutes over, but I think it was worth really kind of delving in, and I would love to continue this conversation because I find these principles to be incredibly powerful, and some of which we will continue to explore more in depth individually in some of our other shows. So, any thoughts, ladies, before we wish everybody a happy solstice and go on for holiday break?
Just want to wish everybody a peaceful season. Just find peace in this time and just enjoy your family, friends, whatever it might be for you. And we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Beautiful. I can't top that. Honestly, dishonor the duality, dial down that judgment, just gift yourself self-love this season. And the new year, this 2024 is aligned. The rhythm is for all of us that 23 was a little rough, and sometimes that contrast is exactly what we need to get the clarity. So I'm very enthusiastic, eager to see the goodness that's coming in. A lot of the people that I'm speaking with have that sense of energy. So take this time of quiet, go within, get clear on what it is you want, feel into that, because as you started this show off with, is that it that's it's all that is, right? And that is within. So tap into that and know. So juicy conversation. Thank you for teeing this one up.
My pleasure and my honor to be here with you ladies and to be with all of you watching. And may these holidays bring you peace and blessings and great joy. Great joy. So, as being here with all of you does for me. So, thank you. And January, tee us up, Joanna.
We will be talking about, again, your vibration and how can you raise your vibration. This will be January 4th, I believe, is our next one. So just stay tuned to see what we put out there. Have a great and happy holiday season. And we look forward to seeing you next year for 2024. Enjoy.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.